Try it. Ugh, shield is down. Ugh, damn it.
So that was Freyna. Freyna is a really good bossing descendant and a really good ad clearing descendant, tailored towards damage over time and ad clearing in general. Has toxic puddle, toxic reaction, and room 0 trauma on the build. Room 0 trauma is a debuff that deals 188% skill damage over time. It lasts 10 seconds. Enemies up to 7 meters away gets inflicted with toxic reaction. Toxic reaction is a standalone debuff similar to poison, although it basically is poison. It just means that no enemy can be immune to it because it isn't poison. That's the only difference between toxic reaction and poison. That's why the icons even look the same. Whenever an enemy dies through room trauma 0, it spawns a toxic puddle that does 200% as well. And then the puddle itself does not cause room trauma 0. That is how Freyna's passive Contagion links now works after the buff, which is a very good buff. I'm really glad they did this. So now we have venom trauma. Venom trauma is the first ability. Whenever you launch a projectile, venom trauma, it creates a puddle.
To your death.
The puddle has a rain down effect. And inside of the radius of the puddle, enemies that step inside of that puddle are afflicted with room 0 trauma. Room 0 trauma then has a 50% chance to spawn another toxic puddle upon death. And you'll notice that it says range 7 meters, max expandable 300%. This tooltip isn't broken. It is working. That is the range to spread the next ability inside of the venom trauma puddle, Panic. So now Panic within 24 meters, as long as you have enough range on your build. So this enemy is inflicted with room 0 trauma, and then 14 meters away, because I have 100% increase on range, Panic is ensuing. So here we have the second ability, the defense mechanism. Defense mechanism is a buff that Freyna gives herself. Please note that this ability is dimension, which will be important later in the video. Gives you plague body armor with a 10-second duration, a 25% defense increase amount, and a 45% imbue rate. What the imbue rate is, attacking enemies, whether they attack you through melees or guns, regardless of how they attack you, there is a 45% chance of them getting inflicted with room 0 trauma. That room 0 trauma inflicts despair in 7 meters of the surrounding enemies, which is also increased by maximum expandable range. Although, even if you have a skill expansion or however much range you have, while it works, it does not say so in the tooltip. And then the despair itself only lasts for 5 seconds, although room 0 trauma lasts for 10 seconds. So the third ability, Putrid Venom. Putrid Venom launches a puddle similar to the first ability. However, the enemies inside of this puddle are left with a debuff called Venom Soaked. The Venom Soaked enemies leave toxic footprints that last 8 seconds, even though the Venom Soaked only lasts for 10 seconds. When an enemy is Venom Soaked, which you can see looks like a little cloud symbol above their head, they leave the toxic footprints, which you can see under here. That was a toxic footprint. Then any enemies that step inside of the toxic footprint are inflicted with room 0 trauma, and these specific enemies from Putrid Venom are infected with decay, whilst inside of decay, they take the damage from decay. You will notice that the first, second, and third ability, and fourth ability will all have different subtypes under the last section. This is so that you can stack all of the debuffs as you please. I'll go into the fourth ability, and then we'll go more into that subject. Venom Babtism is her fourth ability, or her ultimate ability. It is a unique weapon. The unique weapon itself has a base ammo of 45. I have 94 rounds on mine because of the modules and weapon rolls that I have on the Wave of Light. I will go into the Wave of Light later. The ammo on the Wave of Light the modules that affect how the fourth ability performs are going to be magazine rounds, fire rate modules, and the sharp precision shot module is just to give me more fire rate on the weapon the longer I hold it down. The fourth ability inflicts room 0 trauma and nightmare, and then that room 0 trauma inflicts enemies with nightmare up to the range that you have your range set at. This ability sports, like I said, 45 shots. You have 10 seconds to fire all 45 shots, and because of that, we'll go into why I have chosen the Wave of Light. I do not wish to run duration on my gun, so the sharp precision shot module, if you see, it says every 0.4 seconds, and then if we go to a general rounds gun and we go to sharp precision shot, it says every 0.5 seconds. This might seem like not enough to matter, but whenever you're playing to the wire so close, you will get a little bit more out of Wave of Light than you will a different general rounds reactor, or the Secret Garden that has special precision shot on it. Now, the reason you would want Secret Garden is because her first and third ability are tech. The only problem is that you're not really spamming these abilities, so you're just losing the Secret Garden debuff. They do snapshot, but it's still hard to like spam them just to get a little bit more extra damage out of the gun. And Venom Babtism, whenever you activate the gun, these stacks from the Secret Garden buff go away. So Secret Garden here is kind of okay. Like it's not great, but it's just better than nothing. And then the reason I chose impact rounds, it doesn't have to be Wave of Light, just any green ammo type will give you the most firing time for your weapon. So if we just shoot it, this is the green ammo with special precision shot. We end up with 10 rounds left in the magazine. If we switch to the Secret Garden,
Time to wrap this up.
you can see that the cycle rate becomes faster as time goes on. And then we have 13 rounds. Now, the ammo difference between 3 and 10 might not sound like a lot, and it isn't. However, it's just better than nothing, which is what you kind of would get with the Secret Garden. The Secret Garden, at best, you're getting 5% on your other abilities, and nothing with your ultimate ability. So that is why I have chosen Wave of Light. Now, there is a funky thing with frame rates. Right now, I'm operating at 60 frames per second. If I lower the quality of my game, which I typically play at 60 frames per second just because a lot of people do. So I want the similar results that other people are going to get. If I go to unlimited, now I am getting 300 frames per second.
I'll kill you all.
Last time I ended up with 10 rounds in the gun, and now I have 3 rounds, so that gives me an extra 7 rounds. So if I go into the ultimate and then cancel the animation with a roll, I have more time to shoot the bullets. And you see I was able to fire my entire magazine there. If I go back into my original settings and I go back to 60 frames a second on ultra settings, the quality settings don't matter too much. Very little difference. And I reload cancel on the Wave of Light with 60 frames. I will still be able to spend all of my ammunition. So you will acquire the most amount of damage out of Freyna with a lot of duration on her abilities. That way you can stack all 3 debuffs. You can't really stack the second debuff without another module, but you'll see underneath the health bar at the top of the enemy, you'll see all of the debuffs. There is another module called Venom Injection that changes the debuff from Despair to Corrosion. It is important to note that the Corrosion here does not provide more damage, although the Toxic Sense does, but we'll go into this module later. So now we'll go into Freyna's transcendent modules. I'll start with Venom Injection. Venom Injection changes her defense mechanism into an ability called Corrosion and Toxic Sense. It has an HP cost per second of 15% and then an MP cost, but this is with a resource cost reduction on it. So the MP cost per second is 6, so you just have to have enough MP to keep this up perpetually, which is possible through building your Descendant. The good part about Venom is that whenever you drain the maximum amount of hit points, which for some reason this works on overwhelming shields, although it shouldn't. So Toxic Sense, whenever you drain the maximum amount of hit points that you could drain, you are awarded a skill power modifier increase and a maximum toxin increase resistance. The max shield and the purification ability are just static. Purification is just an ability in the first Ascendant that removes all debuffs, so you have a 30% every 1 second that pass to remove all the debuffs on your Descendant. And then you regen 5% of your shield every second. This gives you 50 seconds to regen your entire shield amount. This trades the debuff on defense mechanism with Corrosion, decreases the toxin resistance of the opponent. So we'll wait for our HP to drain to the maximum. First bullet is 412,000. The following bullet is 416,000. This is the damage difference of 25% on the toxin removal. People think that toxin removal does a lot more than it does, but 25% really doesn't do that much. The corrosion rate has a 45% chance to activate, so you're only going to be able to activate it half the time. However, every single bullet fired with Freyna's fourth does project corrosion. You can see that it slowly increases over time, and you can get a little bit more damage out of this module than you can other modules from the fourth ability and all of her skills. This is regarded as the best bossing module currently. I'll go over why I do not prefer Venom Injection over the other modules. So one, whenever you build for maximum cooldown, there is some multi-talented tech that you can use. The multi-talented tech
You're all dead.
You need to activate before your fourth ability runs out to get a 90% cooldown on your abilities. The problem with the second ability is that you have to reactivate it in order to proc the dimension section for her ultimate. So if you're sitting there and you're firing her entire ultimate and you want to proc the ability, you have to turn it off first. And turning it off first will make you lose 5 seconds of corrosion inside of the stack. And then reactivating it will require an animation time inside of the ability itself, canceling a section of your ultimate and resetting your sharp precision shot. So unless I am one-phasing a boss, like I'm going in to melt the Pyromancer in 8 seconds, I am not going to prefer Venom Injection over other modules. Up next is Toxic Mixture. Toxic Mixture changes all of your debuffs on all of your abilities and turns them into necrosis. Fortunately, all necrosis from all abilities stack the same way. It's not like the other debuffs. And then at 100 stacks, you get an 11% critical hit rate increase, although this does not show on the stat sheet, so I'm not entirely sure if this is proccing correctly. As you can guess, the best way to proc these stacks is to shoot them with the ultimate or the fourth ability. Every bullet will give them 1 stack, and then you can maintain the stacks with the first and third ability. And then you want to take out a firearm and
Feel the pain.
This is how you would supplement your damage outside of the ultimate itself. I prefer this one because at the end of the day, the damage increase that you get on your gun is around 25%. I use the Enduring Legacy, so I get a 25% increase. If the ability worked as advertised, the increase would be even more, because the firearm critical hit rate 11% would proc, and you would get an 11% critical hit rate on your base, similar to how Blair functions. And my Enduring Legacy's critical hit rate would go up to around 60%. It has an added benefit at maximum stacks of providing a 15% critical hit resistance reduction. This I believe to be actually the best bossing build, provided you don't need to one phase the boss. In dungeons, when I'm going to need to kill 2 of the enemies, like the 400% dungeons, I would actually prefer a toxic mixture build over the venom injection build, due to the multi-talented tech actually being able to work, and I get extra damage from my Enduring Legacy during cooldown. I'll also go into another one that I prefer in 400% dungeons, and that is Contagion. A lot of people are saying Contagion isn't fantastic. However, I do think it is. It's all Contagion does. If you read the Contagion links, when an enemy infected with room 0 trauma is killed, it spawns a toxic puddle, and then enemies that step into the toxic puddle are inflicted with room 0 trauma. This doesn't change. Room 0 trauma deals continuous damage when an enemy inflicted with room 0 trauma is killed, inflicts room 0 trauma on nearby enemies. So this spreads room 0 trauma to other patients. Whenever you kill one enemy with room 0, they all die from room 0. Once again, I really enjoy the multi-talented tech. So if you really wanted to, you could just build into her 4th ability, and you can mob clear using only her 4th ability. You don't even need the other 3 abilities if you have Contagion on. Neurotoxin synthesis has changed since the update, and now it modifies the effect of room 0 trauma to not spread poison, but inflict attack reduction and weaken regeneration. Outgoing recovery decrease at 50%. So a lot of bosses, a lot of enemies have regeneration on their effects. This just decreases it by half. Plus, I actually do have a fair bit of hit point reduction. This is one of the reasons why Deathstalker takes so long, because you can't really one-face him like a lot of the other bosses, and why Gluttony was such a pain. The attack decrease of 10% is mediocre in my opinion. 10% less damage is meh. Otherwise, all of the abilities work as advertised, but it still does remove the secondary capabilities. Neurotoxin synthesis actually used to be the best mod, and now it's one of the worst mods, much to my dismay. The next mod, Venom Synthesis. Venom Synthesis transforms her 3rd mod from the puddle into you activating toxic footprints for yourself. Although you can put a range on this, I do believe the range leaves much to be desired. I think they need to increase the range on this. However, you are gifted with a 30% movement speed increase. This is similar to Viessa's Frost Road ability. However, this does imbue the enemies with room 0 trauma. Then the room 0 trauma still performs decay as normal. You just don't get the giant puddle anymore. So now I'll go into the 2 best modules, I believe, that are for bossing Freyna, which are going to be Venom Injection and Toxic Mixture. If you have a bad reactor, Venom Injection will give you a little bit more damage in order to wipe the bosses in the first phase before they go immune. I have this blink to show you 2 options. The first option is Spear and Shield. Spear and Shield will give you a little extra damage. The second option is going to be Skill Extension. This will allow you to not have to worry about the tech on the ultimate as much. Third option is Skill Expansion. This will give you a little bit more range for your 1st and 3rd ability if you were trying to do more damage with Venom Injection. And then I have also put a Cerulean module. socket in here for more hit points in case I need more hit points. This is usually what I do for the invasion dungeons. I put a second cerulean module here. That way I can survive the invasion dungeons a little better in the final phase without worrying about dying as much. But for bossing, I do want Spear and Shield. I have the Wave of Light reactor on just so I can expend all of the bullets inside of her fourth ability. The only roll that matters on your mounted gun is going to be the rounds per magazine. Everything else just does not affect. For bossing on Freyna, you are going to want Slayer. You don't really need the distorted set from the Deathstalker. That actually still won't give you more damage than the Slayer set will.
Activating toxic veil.
And you can still one-shot the Pyromancer with a mediocre reactor. Mine has tech and singular on it. Obviously, the singular isn't doing anything, so you can do this with a mediocre reactor. You'll see the clear time on this one at 9 seconds. Now, the toxic mixture, so that you can input the 100 stacks of necrosis on the boss. After the 100 stacks is on the boss, you supplement with Putrid venom, and then you swap to your Enduring Legacy.
You're all dead.
Just make sure that before your ability ends, you activate the second ability to proc multi-talented.
You dare mess
That way, you get a much quicker cooldown on your fourth ability. This cooldown gives you just enough time to fire around 110 bullets from the Enduring Legacy. That's why my Enduring Legacy does not have extra rounds in the magazine. I would rather want either reload or more crit rate. My Enduring Legacy build is right here. I have this module slot uncatalyzed. I really need to recatalyze it. I just haven't made a decision yet. I do believe I'm going to go with reload though. So this is the venom injection build. They are the same build with the exception of the transcendent module. Now you will have to drain your hit points all the way unless you're using an overwhelming shield build, which I'll go over after this. So you can see that that went a little faster because I'm doing a little bit more damage. So I have lost an entire second by using the damage difference of venom injection. And this is what the actual MP drain looks like on the venom injection build.
Time to wrap this
It
up.
is important to note that on this build, I do have maximized conservation on, so it costs less MP. So going over the build itself, we want maximum cooldown. This is done with nimble fingers, MP conversion, and the multi-talented tech. As I said before, multi-talented tech doesn't work with venom injection. So if you have venom injection, you can always sub out multi-talented for dangerous ambush. That will clear the bosses faster anyway, although you can do the same thing on either one. We have focus on toxic, focus on tech, tech amplification, and toxic amplification. I do have a spear and shield here. This is only for one-phasing bosses. When I'm not one-phasing bosses, I either need more range for the 400% dungeons, or I need more hit points to survive the invasions, which will probably get, hopefully, we see harder content. These are the slots that I have on the build. This facilitates all of the builds that I'm talking about. I do have to say that if you have a dedicated Luna, a crit-based Freyna will still do way more damage with a Luna in the party. Even if that enemy is Gluttony, you will still do more damage with crit Freyna and a Luna than you will do with these modules that remove your crit. And then for the 400% dungeons, I run Contagion with a skill expansion on. And these are the builds that I would cycle through. I don't really use venom injection. I only slotted it on here because everyone and their mother on the internet said it was the best module. I think the strongest module is in fact Toxic Mixture, because the Toxic Mixture gives you a 25% damage increase to your Enduring Legacy or your Secret Garden or whatever weapon you have, provided that you do have Sharp Precision Shot. If you don't have Sharp Precision Shot on it, this 25% increase is actually higher. And this just is because of the additive bonuses of firearm attack. Toxic Mixture is adding 100% firearm attack to this number right here. And then you also get 60% firearm attack to that number at the tail end of Sharp Precision Shot. So you'll be messing around with 260% damage on your firearm attack. And this is the build I've gotten with Freyna. If you're going Venom Injection Overwhelming Shield, it's really hard to fit all of the damage that would be required for that build. That's the reason I don't run Venom Injection, as well as the Multi-Talented tech. I have Multi-Talented on here, but it doesn't even work with Venom Injection, so it does clear up a slot for more shields. The way the Distorted Resolve set works is that whenever your HP is at 1, your toxic skill power goes to 14% plus. While 14% sounds like it's a good number, it isn't really, and that boils down to your build. So right now I have a 1.62 multiplier on my toxic skill power boost. If I equip the Distorted value set, this goes to 1.76. 14 divided by 162 gives me about an 8% increase to my damage, as opposed to the 26% increase to my damage that I am getting with the Slayer set. So the amount of damage that you're increasing from your external components will be tripled on the Slayer set than it will be on the Distorted value set, even if you are running Overwhelming Shield. And if you are running Overwhelming Shield, you'll be doing less damage anyway, because you have to sacrifice a lot just to get enough shields on the build. I don't really like Overwhelming Shields for Freyna. It's not bad, it's not for me. Check out my channel if you like the way I do content. Consider subscribing. I do a lot of this stuff on Twitch. I made this on Twitch, so if you're interested in that kind of stuff, the link to my Twitch is in the description. Y'all have a sick day and peace out.